Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So to those of you who have just arrived, so this is our leadership panel, Pitfalls to Power Animal Rights Leadership. And today we're very lucky. We've got Edie from Advocates for Animals, James Morgan from Vegan Hacktivists, Laura Hellwig from VIVA, and Robbie Lockie from the Freedom Food Alliance. And it's going to be chaired by Dilan from Animal Think Tank. So should be a really great talk, and thank you guys so much for being here.
Cheers, Claudia. Can you guys hear me all right? Okay, brilliant. I'm really excited to bring you this panel on leadership today. I think our relationship to leadership is so important to movement building. So hopefully this panel can expand our understanding of it, deepen our relationship to leadership and with leaders in the movement. We're hoping that with this panel we can just kind of humanize the experience of leadership, which can sometimes be a mystical thing, or stuff that feels like it's a bit kind of, wow, big. And we want to shed light into what are the kinds of experiences that leaders go through, what sorts of thoughts are they having, talk about the challenges, and hopefully at the end of it, some of you might see yourselves potentially in positions of leadership one day. Potentially you might find some tips for your own leadership journeys. So I'd encourage you guys to think about, what are you trying to get out of it? I want to get a sense of who's in the audience today before we really jump into it. So could you put your hand up if you're currently a leader in some capacity of a team or an organization or even just like something small? Okay, brilliant. That's cool. So we can use that to shape the conversation that we're having. Could you put your hand up if you're new to the movement and sort of trying to find your place in it? Okay, so we've got a couple of those. And could you put your hand up if you're in the movement but you wouldn't see yourself as a leader right now? Cool, so quite a few of those as well. Nice mix. So yeah, have a little reflect about what you want to get out of this panel. So on the panel today, as Claudia said, I'll give you a quick intro to our panelists. First one here has a name which I love because it just really rolls off the tongue. Edie is a solicitor and MD of Advocates for Animals, which is the UK's first animal law firm. She's also the founder and executive director of the Animal Law Foundation, which is working to basically, hang on, I should really get these bios up before I start introducing people. So the Animal Law Foundation is a charity which seeks to activate the change possible by enforcing existing animal welfare law. We've got Robbie Lockie, CEO of the Freedom Food Alliance, which you all just heard about. It's a watchdog and advocacy org that exposes the deceit of the animal farming industry and equips consumers with the information they need to make good decisions. They're also the co-founder and board member of Plant-Based News. We've got Laura Hellwig. You're all in the exact order in which I wrote this, which is really interesting. She's MD and head of campaigns at VIVA, one of the UK's most prominent vegan charities, which advocates for veganism through undercover investigations and dynamic campaigns. And then lastly, we've got James Morgan, executive director of Vegan Hacktivists, which is a community of advocates with specialist skills like design, software, websites, and they offer their services to build the capacity of the animal freedom movement. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do this kind of bit of an interview style, cross between an interview and a living room conversation. So, if you guys have questions for each other, feel free to ask them as well. If you just want to chime in sometimes, feel free to do that. And also, if my questions aren't bringing up the things you want to talk about, just brush them aside and talk about the things you want to talk about. You have my permission to do that. Cool. So I thought, to start with, I'm really interested in the kind of choices that might lead to someone becoming a leader. Help people kind of illuminate for people what your journeys might have looked like. So I want to just ask, what, in about 2 minutes each, what are the kind of key experiences and choices that led you to the positions that you hold today and the level of responsibility that you have. Edie, do you want to start?
Sure. So the question, what led me here? I think it wasn't really deliberate, certainly not at this stage. So my journey was that I have always cared about animals, but not really kind of thought that I would have a career. I suppose it just didn't cross my mind. Went to university, studied law, and always saw, I always cared about social causes. In fact, one of the reasons why I became a lawyer was to do something probably social justice related. But somewhere along the way, of course, all the jobs that come up are more commercial jobs. So fell into intellectual property law for a bit and thought I would do animal stuff on the side. Worked, and then an opportunity to be a lawyer at Cruelty Free International came up. So leapt at the opportunity because it was just this crazy thing where the stars aligned. My profession and my love of animals just suddenly came together. And whilst there, a fellow lawyer at the charity and I realised that there was a huge gap in the market for animal practitioners, an animal legal service. What we were doing at Cruelty Free International was using the law to help animals. And so we realised that other animal protection organisations would really benefit from it, because at Cruelty Free International we were researching the law, where the law wasn't being applied properly, where the law wasn't being interpreted favourably with the animal's interests in mind. All of these things which just wasn't being utilised in the animal sector. And so we realised that actually, and it was creating huge change at Cruelty Free, the work Cruelty Free International was really amplified by having this tool in their campaigning tool belt. So we felt that actually this is a really useful service, no one else is doing it, it's really important, but it was really a leap of faith, because no one else was doing it. So you kind of have this idea that it's useful, but of course you don't know, you don't have a crystal ball. So we took this leap of faith and set up a law firm to do what we were doing at Cruelty Free International for other animal groups. And it turns out that our instinct was completely right, that it was being underutilised, that loads of groups did want to use the law to further their campaigning objectives. And we also, we extend our service to non-groups as well, and we offer, individuals come to us as well, activists come to us as well. But really, the leadership aspect of that, of course, just kind of followed from that. It wasn't that I went on this career path and I was a coordinator, then a manager, then a leader. It wasn't like that. It was that I had a service to offer, and part of having to do that entailed me having to become a leader. And as a result of that, I'm learning a lot of leadership as I go, but that's exciting too. But yeah, that's kind of been my journey into leadership.
Brilliant. I love that idea of seeing a gap in the movement and then moving to fill it. And in order to do that, you had to build that leadership muscle, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And can I also just say a pitfall of power is people getting my name wrong. I'm called Edie Bowles on a daily basis. So the fact that you said Edie Bowles is already, I've made it,
Thank you. Robbie, do you want to tell us a bit about your story?
Sure. A lot like Edie, I fell into leadership through a desire to create something that mattered to me. Almost a decade ago, my business partner and I, Klaus, we met and decided we wanted to create something that spread the plant-based and vegan message far and wide through media, through popular media, through entertainment, through education. And you're kind of naturally forced into leadership if you want to build a team, if you want to create a product, or if you want to build a platform. You obviously need people to support you and assist you, so you quickly have to learn how to lead or how not to lead for the most part. And it's definitely been a roller coaster, I must say. It's probably been the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life, and I've had many jobs in many different sectors. And I think it's the hardest job because I care about this so much. I eat it, breathe it, sleep it. It's my whole world. And so when things go wrong, it's painful, really, really painful. Much more than if you're in a corporate job, things go wrong, you're like, lost £1 million, like it's someone else's money, it's a corporate, you don't really care. But when it's veganism or animal rights sector, it's something that you really, really care about. And so when things do go wrong, or if money is lost, it's very, very challenging, and you take it personally. And we'll get into like the pitfalls. It's taking things personally and blaming oneself is one of the, I guess, side effects of leadership, and that's a really challenging lesson sometimes is to be able to know when to let go and when to continue ultimately. But yeah, it's been quite a ride. And yeah, loved every minute.
Thank you. Some really interesting just bookmarks there on some of the challenges leaders go through. The idea of, how do we deal when we hold something so close to our heart? The idea of building a team is such a big thing, and I'm hoping we can get to that later in the panel. So thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Oh,
Laura.
thank you very much. I've already been loving hearing your answers. I think, this is a really great opportunity to sit together and talk about this, because, I don't think we have that many opportunities to actually talk about how is it being like in a leadership position. So I think like my kind of journey's been that I did management and international business at uni. So I think I always was quite ambitious and saw myself in some leadership capacity or wanted to be there. And I mean, the dream of it is very different than the reality. It's not just like what you think, like I would be. But I think then after uni, I did I worked in marketing, and I worked, I volunteered for an orphanage in Kenya and went back and, with all that passion to like do something about it. And all along, I was always really caring about animals, like going to the dog shelter when I was younger, and throughout uni becoming more and more vegan. Like I was veggie for a long time, but my vegan journey really took quite a long time. And I think, after I finished my master's, I was like reading job descriptions, and I knew I wanted to do something ethical, but I was looking at like corporate social responsibility, because kind of when you do like a master's of management, like that's kind of the more likely path you do if you want to do something ethical or ethical fashion. I think whenever I was reading the charity job description, I could just see how I was so much more excited about it. So that's what led me to my job at VIVA. Actually, I applied for the marketing manager role, which was way beyond my level. Like I hadn't done like proper marketing work before in that sense. But I was invited to an interview, very much to my surprise. And then I was actually offered a different job as a campaigns assistant, because I think, Juliet, the founder and director of VIVA, saw a campaigner in me. And I remember starting as a campaigns assistant, and my manager at the time, who only was my manager for a year because then he retired to live in Lanzarote, which sounds nice. I remember thinking like, oh wow, he started as a campaigns assistant, and I was thinking, oh, I wonder if one day I could have his position, like, I could grow to have that position, because I think, just thought of being able to work for animals in that capacity. And then, so I started Viva 7.5 years ago, and kind of, I think I'd maybe then more of the traditional way than you guys falling into it, because worked myself then after being a campaigner, senior campaigner, campaigns manager, and then, I think there was a gap, especially with like, I think if you have a founder, they, one of the challenges probably that you look for someone who can fill in your shoes when you want to do like maybe step up and do something a bit different. And I think that's why I came in, and now I've been doing this, for a while. You asked me yesterday how long, and I think, I should have looked it up now, but I think maybe I've been campaigns manager for 4 years, and then MD and head of our campaigns for 2. But I think it's not like the traditional way of being an MD for a company, because our founder is still very involved, and she's like very inspiring, leading Viva. And also we haven't got another campaigns manager, so I think now we're looking to actually hire a campaigns manager, which will give me more of the opportunity to actually then step more into the MD role, which I'm really excited about and curious what it will bring. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. I love that image of Juliet seeing the campaigner in you, and I think it really speaks, it just really kind of activated this thing that feels really important to me of we come into leadership, but we're helped along and we're seen by others, and they kind of, that ask to be into leadership is really important. I imagine you guys have learned a lot about that, leading teams yourselves. So, let's go to you, James.
So I come from the tech sector, having worked there for about 10 years, and just like the rest of us, had a massive affinity for animals. And it led me to doing outreach at the weekend, which I really enjoyed. That was what really made me happy every week. I did it for a while. I got a bit burnt out with it, and also I recognized that as much as I was growing a lot by doing that street outreach, there were people out there that were understandably better at it because they could devote more time to it. And so what I recognized was that with my corporate experience, there were some learnings that I could apply to the movement. That's when I stumbled across Vegan Hacktivists, and I realized that actually I could be a bit more effective by applying those learnings from the tech sector into the movement. So I've really enjoyed doing that. I realized that I'm a bit more introverted than I thought I was at first. So it's a really good way to actually still be impactful without burning yourself out, and in a community, in a place that you feel really comfortable in. So yeah, I've been really lucky to land in that, really. In terms of like the choice, often like many of the things that you do in a leadership role, you can get some of those skills from doing roles at other levels, but other elements you can't, but you just, one of the choices that you make is to kind of expose yourself to making mistakes, but making them quickly, recognizing that you're making a mistake, and then changing path afterwards. And that's something that I've learnt to enjoy doing after a while. You know, as Robbie was saying, it can be tough to make mistakes, but yeah, you adapt, you learn, and then it makes you a stronger person for it.
Cheers, James. I just want to really drill in that piece about making mistakes and learning. So important. Also, just love that you've name dropped being more introverted than you thought you were and stepping into leadership, because I think there can be a conception that leaders need to be extroverted and always out there. So useful to highlight that. Cool. We had a little format. I'm going to tweak it a tiny bit. I want to put a question to Edie and Robbie, because you two are both founders, and I want to hear a bit about what that experience has been like. What are some of the surprises that you've encountered being founders, and how have you dealt with some of the challenges that have come up? Maybe Robbie, do you want to go first?
Sure. The biggest challenge, I think, is finding good people. People that you can trust, people that are going to carry your vision forward, but also at the same time people that you can have a good bond with and a connection with. Being a leader, sometimes it's tough because you want to be friends with everyone, you want people to like you, but a lot of the time your staff or your team might not like you. They might not like the things you are planning and the way that you do things, and being able to sit with that and be okay with the fact that there might be aspects of your team that are going to be problematic and challenging, but having the patience to work through that and not be too hard on yourself is really, really important, and I've definitely learnt the hard way with that. But yeah, my main thing is like finding good people. That's really a challenge, and making sure the interview process is you've got that nailed, because rushing into hiring people can result in a lot of wasted time, because you can go back and forth, do lots of big months of onboarding, and then it just doesn't work out, and then you're back to square one. So for me, that's one of the most important things. Yeah.
That was really good to hear. Oh God, what, as a founder, geez. I've learned a lot about myself, I suppose. Actually, I'll tell you, so to boil it down, because I can't go into everything I've learned, that's absurd. And so to boil it down to one interesting thing I've learned, I've really learned how it feels on the other side of something, right? So prior to this, I had only had experiences of being an employee, and I only knew it from my perspective and what that felt like, and I'm really kind of exposing myself here, but like as an employee, I was always kind of thinking, doing a good job as well, but I was always kind of thinking about kind of what I wanted from the situation, how the company worked for me, things like that. And I'm so grateful for the lesson of having seen it now from the other side as a founder that cares so deeply about the organisation and just wants the organisation to do well and just wants to kind of get that message across to the team as well. But of course, I now have this perspective. I'm like, well, how would have I felt when I was in their position? So I just love the opportunity. I always love the opportunity in life to see things from both sides. And I think being a founder has really given me that opportunity to see it from both sides.
Yeah. As a founder, there's this aspect of holding vision, isn't there, in a way that perhaps in other roles there isn't. What have you found works in holding that vision and communicating that vision to others?
So, sorry, Robbie, just a part B. Yeah, so how have I found it works? Yeah, so I've learned a lot along the way on how to do that. I think it really helps to build a big team and a team that you really trust and trust you. I think that's a huge part of it as well, and that doesn't happen instantly by no means. So it is about, there is a degree of finding right fits along the way as well. But I also think that the lesson I've learned on how I can do better to communicate it and bring people along is to be as transparent as possible, is to kind of bring people into the decision making more, is to make people feel supported and valued. And that's really helped people understand. I love it when people kind of use terms like our organisation and we're doing this. That's when I know that we're kind of all in it together, and that they've really, I heard yesterday, they've really built into the organisation. So I think, yeah, it's about involving people as much as possible and trusting them and them trusting you.
Love that, thank you. I want to pop over to James. Vegan Hacktivists, you're an organisation that has probably a lot of ideas coming at you, a lot of opportunities. And I'm wondering how you navigate that. How do you prioritize? How do you maintain focus on what's important?
Yeah, so it's tough. It's tough. It's a short answer to prioritize, absolutely. So for those that don't know, we offer free services to the movement. What it means is that we really enjoy providing websites for organizations, providing logos, that kind of thing. But what it often results in is more demand than we can supply. We've recognized that. What we've done is two things. First is that we've come up with a prioritization model so that we prioritize the organizations that, in our view, are going to be most effective. We have a framework, it's called the RICE framework, so we look at the potential reach, impact, the confidence level that the organization will still be functional in 6 months to a year, and the effort that it will take us to do the work. And we kind of use some multipliers, and it gives us a score. That's kind of a semi-objective score, but we also, it's not necessarily our North Star, but we often use that in trying to understand who we have to prioritize first, that kind of thing. But equally, we don't like saying no, and we want to uplift everyone in the movement. Not that long ago, we built a matchmaking platform, so for organizations that we can't work with, we have a volunteer community of about 2,000 people who are available if anyone has a small task, even a big task that needs doing, across software development, design, SEO, you name it. You can go to our service, it's called Playground, and you can apply for help on there. And that's one way to get connected. But also from an organizational perspective, it's really important to be comfortable to say no, knowing that just because you're turning someone down, it doesn't mean they're not going to get the help that they need. But also it ensures that you can stay focused. Saying no gives you direction, it prevents scope creep. Especially in the world of tech, scope creep can often be a killer to projects. You don't know, when the work is done. Learning to say no has been super tough, but it's something that I think really helps to guide us to make sure that we're only working on the most impactful things at a time.
I came across this quote a couple of weeks ago that's just been rattling around in my head for a while, and it said something like, life is about disappointing others enough so that you don't disappoint yourself. And it really just hit home that harsh reality of, we have finite time, we have finite resources, and we have to make hard decisions about where to focus our energy. And that can really transfer over from organizations to personal life as well. Thanks for highlighting that, James. Laura, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about sustaining ourselves. I was having a chat with Paul Engler, who is a leader in the social movement space in the US, authored This Is an Uprising, and he was talking to me about this idea of, actually, we have a big challenge ahead and we need to set up structures, not just for ourselves to make progress, but for future generations to make progress. And it really highlighted the nature of the long-term nature of this work. Although, of course, we want to be ambitious and achieve as much as we can in the shortest time frame possible, it is still a long struggle, and we have to sustain ourselves over that long haul. So I'm curious how, as a leader, you do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very important question, and I think probably you all agree it's a challenge, because we all really care about what we do. Like Robbie said, in a corporate environment, if you lose $1 million, I'd still be terrified, but looks like you get used to that one. I've never been in that position. But I think, you really care. We care so much, and we want things to change tomorrow, and we want animal freedom tomorrow. But I think, as we all knew already, and also this has honed in again, it's not going to happen. And so we have to be doing it for the long haul. But yeah, I think it's hard to be with the feeling that you can never do enough, basically. I think as like probably I think looking at most people working for VIVA, I think like we all probably feel we can never do enough, but especially then if you're in a leadership position. So I think it's learning to be with that and accepting that, because that's just what it is. But it's not easy, and I think I've thought about a few things which I try to do, like in work and outside work, to try and do that. So I think first one thing is accepting it, that you can never do enough. And then I think like inside work, I feel like, yeah, accepting you can never do enough, and really brutal prioritizing. Like James said already, I mean, I love you're working for a tech company and you have a proper like framework. Like, I don't have as professional framework. For me, it's like brutal prioritizing what comes first. And sometimes I think with time I've learned, like, I'm really like into mindfulness. I don't want to rush through all my tasks. I want to do them to my very best ability, and I want to do them well. And that means sometimes I just have to do less, or I have to just brutally prioritize, like, and I think, well, these things, they can wait a month, and these can't. And not try to do too much, but there's always too much to do. So it's like, you can't expect, like, I think, often we sit together, like even Jill and I sit together and we're like, oh my God, it's so manic. What can we do? And we're like, oh, we make sure, we do a bit less. But it's just because there's so much to do in this movement, and there's so many campaigns, there's so many animals suffering, there's the planet, our own health, and so many audience we could reach, that I think you really have to be strict with yourself. And I think it comes down to building strong teams as well, like having people you trust, and also communicating your workload. Like, I feel like sometimes I'd love to be there more for my team, because I'm also managing a team of campaigners, but sometimes also like just other tasks taking over. So I think those things are really important when you're at work. And then I think maybe, it might sound like a cliche, the whole work-life balance, but I think it's so, so important. And I think for me it's been a learning curve, because I still get to the point where I overexhaust myself. Like, there are phases where I'm like, honestly, so, so exhausted, and I just see that I'm not as good at my work, and I can't find, I have to like then be really strict. And I think, and then there's normally a moment where you snap out of this tunnel vision you've got about what you want to do. And so, yeah, I try to, I feel like I don't know if you guys feel the same, but the higher kind of rise up, like even though VIVA is quite small, so I still am involved with campaigns, but not as much. There's a lot of leadership involved in it. So I think it's really important to reconnect to the animals. So what I love to do, I go to the dog shelter and walk dogs, and help my friend with her dog charity. And I mean, she is totally overwhelmed, but I can have this step back and just take the dogs for a walk. And I think that's a really nice thing to like find the balance, being out in nature. And I meditate and do mindfulness. And I think also because the movement, like, I love people at VIVA. We're like a family, and I really love that. That means I'm also friends with a lot of them. So with some of my friends who I also work with, we just have the rule, we don't talk about work. Because I think otherwise the whole weekend when you go away, like, you're just going to talk about it and it just comes up. But I think sometimes you just have to say, like, no, not now, because you're just going to be better in the long term. You're going to give more by having that balance. And I think it's really important, but also really difficult.
Absolutely. Thank you. How are we going for time? 9:55. Okay. I think we can open it up for a few questions from the audience. Anyone got a question? Up the back.
Hi, thank you. I was just wondering, so I kind of started in the grassroots, and then I ended up kind of in academia and the nonprofit sector, and found myself in an executive director role, which honestly didn't really feel very comfortable to me. And in that time, I was kind of trying to look into alternative models. And I know maybe not so much in animal movement, but in other social justice movements, I think there's a lot of conversation about less hierarchical or non-hierarchical structures and circles, and kind of revolutionizing from within and like democratizing our workspaces. So I'm just curious about if any of you have thoughts about kind of that kind of model of kind of co-leadership.
Hello? Right. I have quite strong opinions on this because I've worked in different organizations who have taken different approaches to leadership. I would say that most human beings aren't naturally geared towards leadership, and in places where there has been this sort of more flat structure, it's been a lot more chaotic because no one really knows who's in charge or who should be making the decisions or where the buck stops, essentially. I think there is this, in the world we live today, there's this inclination to want to bring everyone along with the journey, but I think sometimes a person or a couple of people do need to make those difficult decisions, and when you include everyone in those difficult decisions, it can make the process a lot harder and more lengthy. But I think it really depends on what kind of decision making you're talking about within an organization. I do think that some parts of the organization could be more flat in the decision making, bringing everyone in, including the organization. But I think there are certain aspects, more kind of high level aspects, which I think should maintain that hierarchical structure, I think, because otherwise it could slow down a lot of progress.
Yeah, I pretty much agree, actually. Again, it comes down to what I was saying. It comes down to what I was saying about seeing it from both sides now, because I certainly know that my inclination before running Advocates for Animals was always kind of probably leaning towards more progressive models and more progressive ways of doing things. And since running the organisation, I have learned that, it's not actually, the leader's not the most important person in an organisation, it's just a role. Actually, there's a real privilege to having a job that you can switch off from, and that you're kind of more secure and you have less responsibility. So I think there needs to be a recognition that all roles are equally important, it's just they're different. So maybe that's a way of reframing it that has that kind of egalitarian feel, but also recognises that different roles need to do different things. So I agree. I think someone does need to make difficult decisions and needs to kind of steer the ship, and there are other decisions that should absolutely be more inclusive. That's my take on my kind of 5 years. It might change, but yeah. Oh.
I don't want to just introduce corporate frameworks this whole session, but I do have another one actually to the point of who is a decision maker. There's a framework. It's very similar to RICE, but it's RACI, R-A-C-I. Bear with me on this one. And basically, if you just have a clear idea of who is responsible with a decision, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed, if you can make a clear picture of that, then that can make it can speed up decision making, because then it means if you can identify who fits in each of those roles based on the actual roles that they serve within the organisation, then perhaps you can make sure that you don't give someone who should just be informed the power to be a decision maker in a move, or the opposite. So RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed.
Yeah, I really like that. No, that's all really interesting what you're saying. I think it's also really important to build a strong top, like to not just have one person, like you say, like having a team of people or different people who are more accountable for different areas, because I do think, which I assume you would go, it's a lot for one person to have this overall decision. I think it's a lot of responsibility for founders. You guys are probably, oh my God, what if I make the wrong decision? So I think comes to I guess for us it's coming to the next generation of Jad's the founder, I'm not, and I think I really love the idea of having, a strong top, so that's actually, you can consult, and yes, sometimes you won't agree, so I think it's good when there's somebody who has a final decision and takes the final responsibility, and also then, like you say, it comes with having to take the hit if it's wasn't the right decision. But I think, it's really important to have a strong top where people, there are a few, not saying loads of people, but who can share that process or even just bounce off each other. Because I think often when you actually start talking about those things, it becomes more obvious what's the right thing. So I might not say oh, can you make this decision? But I can be can we talk about this? Can I bounce this off you? Can I use you as a sounding board?
Awesome. Probably got time for one more?
Yeah.
The front? Oh, not quite, sorry.
Thanks, really interesting discussion. And I was wondering if you could say a few words about the extent to which you have role models, either within the movement or outside of it, that you consciously try to emulate in terms of their approach to leadership. But then, following on from that, are you aware of yourselves as role models for others that work in your organizations, and how do you think about that and the fact that your leadership styles influence the culture of your organizations, right? And kind of leadership cultures can come from your role models through you to the next generation of activists. And, you know, if you want to create good working cultures in your organizations, just how conscious of all that stuff are you, I guess?
You happy for me to start? Well, I think it's really interesting because I think with the journey of being a leader, I think you learn to not try to be like someone else. Because I think it's really, I think it's almost a progress of learning to trust your own intuition and trusting that, like, for me, it's really important to be like an ethical leader. I want people to feel good about their work and about where they work. And then I think I have role models. One of them is probably Melanie Joy, but I've never worked for her, so who knows how it would be like. But I think I really love her approach, and I've done like some training with her. And I think it's really good, like, I think it's almost like picking. Like, it's not like this one person does things how I want to do them, but like thinking, oh, I really like this and I really like that. But then I think at the same time, it's like embracing our differences. You know, like me and Juliet are very different, and that's probably very good for VIVA because we bring different things to VIVA. And I think it's like learning to trust yourself as well. And I think that only comes with time because at the beginning, I think even like learning, it's okay to not have all the answers, but to know which questions to ask. And I think being a role model, I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, I'm this big role model. Like, I certainly wouldn't say that. I don't think I'm as aware of that or would see myself as that so much. But I guess it comes with it at some point, maybe.
Go ahead, James.
I'm very lucky that my wife has been in the movement for a while, so she runs Animal Equality UK. So I've seen from the inside, her journey of leadership, and that's been fantastic. And also through her experience, I've got to know a lot of the great leaders that are here right now in the room. So I've been able to learn from her. So I'm really lucky to have had that opportunity. But what I saw actually. Is that coming from a corporate world, like the corporate sector is just out to make money. And even within a huge organization, there's competition between teams, there's politics, all of that stuff. I found that broadly the animal protection space is on the same team, and that has just inspired me to feel also safer within that community to reach out to people when I'm unsure about something or a bit lost on something. Like we're all buddies. And we all make time for each other, and I'm really grateful for that.
Role models. I would say people like Leah Garces, CEO of Mercy for Animals, because it's such a large organization with so many moving parts, and she always seems to do it with such grace, such a cool head. Of course, sometimes when people say to me, oh, everything you do looks so organized and so well put together, but it's a bit like being a duck. You're going along the water on the surface, it's calm, but underneath there's these feet kind of pedaling away like crazy. And that's often how it feels from a leadership perspective. As far as like being a role model, as Laura said, sometimes you're so focused head down, you don't think about how you might necessarily be setting a good example. But I am reminded of that when there are problems and when there are challenges. You think, when staff or team are not happy or if there's something challenging, how you're conducting yourself and how you present yourself to your team, whether you're a cool head or whether you lose your shit. This is how you create a culture, as the question was put to us, that I think it's really important how we present ourselves. And of course, we always want to be human, we want to be genuine, but I think as a leader there is a pressure there to put on a brave face. If everything's going wrong or if there's some challenges, I think it's important to be calm and cool-headed about it. And I think for me, that's the most important thing to convey to others, that when things are going wrong, if there's chaos, is to take a big, deep breath and approach it with a cool head. Because I think when we dive into challenges with a sense of chaos and kind of a frantic energy, it can make it worse. So I always try and remind myself, and of course the team as well, that no matter how bad things get, we'll fix it, we'll work through it together. Yeah.
Sure. James. There we go. Yeah, thank you. And I also love the fact that James's role model is Abby. That makes me happy. I was nervous because I was like, do I tell them my real model or do I come up with a cooler one? Well, she is cool, to be fair. But my role model is probably realistic, like if I'm being honest, Taylor Swift. And the reason being... The reason being is because what I really admire about her is that she's doing things differently. That she remains friendly, she's creative, she's doing things differently. She's actually creating a culture shift. And how I kind of translate that in my small way, on my small level, is that I always want to make sure, if I'm being serious about, wanting to be a role model to people that want to get into animal law, I want to make sure that people see that you can be a lawyer and be friendly, and be open, and be funny, and all of those things, rather than feel that you have to be stuffy and all of these old ways of doing things. So yeah, Taylor Swift.
Brilliant. Did not expect a Tay-Tay name drop, but there we are. We'll wrap it up with a quick question for you all. What is a nugget of advice that you would give to your younger self at the start of your leadership journey? Anyone who wants to go first?
Advice to my younger self would be have more confidence in yourself, that don't doubt yourself so much, because the imposter syndrome, wow, that is just one of the biggest blocks in the road for a strong leader, someone who constantly questions whether they can make that decision or whether they have to continuously defer to others. It's great to have mentors, it's great to have people to go to, as Laura said, sounding boards, but there comes a point where one has to say, back yourself, make your decision, be confident about your decision, because if you are constantly, criticizing yourself and that you allow that internal criticism to take over, you won't be able to achieve the things you want to achieve.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that really resonates what you said. I think, just tell yourself you can do it, and it would be okay. At the end of the day, we were making really important decisions, but when we're making campaigns decisions or staffing decisions, at the end of the day, it will be okay, and we're the world's not going to break down, and just trust in that, and like you say, maybe sometimes not overthink too much. But I agree, doubting yourself, but it's difficult because all humans do it. It's part of the human condition. So I think that is where mindfulness comes in, and like you say, taking a breath and trying to take a step back from it. Yeah.
Just to expand on those points a bit, culturally as Brits, I think it's so hard for us to big up ourselves. We really do. Self-confidence is really so different for Brits than many other cultures. So what I would suggest is to get some friends or family to tell you what they think your strengths are, because otherwise you're not going to believe them yourself if you try to write them down, and use that as a guide of these are skills that I can use for the movement. And we heard about the applications opening up for Kickstarter for Good. There are some fantastic ideas out there. I wish I had more self-confidence as well. I think it sounds like something that we all share here. Really is just going for it and thinking, what's the worst that can happen? Because everything works out in the end, no matter what.
Pretty much going to just echo what they've said. Just do it and be okay with making mistakes and lean into them, learn from them, but just trust yourself.
Thank you. This has been so rich. It's been such an honor chairing this panel with all you amazing, bright people. Please give them a round of applause.